It is 1 a.m. in Washington, 10:30 in New Delhi, and 2 on a Monday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Geun-hye. Here are the top stories making headlines at this hour. President Park Geun-hye calls on officials to come up with measures to prepare the nation to immediately repel any North Korean provocation. Now, this in the wake of findings that a series of North Korean drones flew undetected over the South on espionage missions. Washington will send 2 additional ballistic missile destroyers to Japan to counter the North Korean threat and says China better respect its neighbors. And new data shows that non-financial assets of Korean households make up more than 70% of total assets, and most of them are in real estate. We'll have the details. But first, our top story this Monday afternoon. South Korea is on alert after the military discovered yet another suspected North Korean drone on a mountain in Gangwon-do province, about 130 kilometers south of the inter-Korean border. We have our Kim Hyun-bin standing by at the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul. So Hyun-bin, this must be very concerning that this is the 3rd drone found on South Korean territory in a matter of weeks. So what kind of countermeasures does Seoul plan to take?
Hey, Kanyang, the Defense Ministry announced a few hours ago that key commanders in every military branch held an emergency meeting in Seoul on Monday to discuss the recent drone infiltration. Kim emphasized Defense Minister Kim Kwang-jin, who led the meeting, urged all facets of the military to maintain flawless operation readiness in regards to the suspected North Korean drones and other threats from Pyongyang. Kim emphasized that the 3 drones found in South Korea in recent days were for surveillance purposes, but in the future, they could be used for terror or attack purposes. The ministry says if the drones are confirmed to have come from the north, Pyongyang is in clear violation of Korea's armistice agreement, as well as an international agreement on flying over another country's airspace without prior notification.
All right, so what are some of the military's plans to prevent such incidents from happening ever again?
Well, North Korea has hundreds of drones or unmanned area vehicles in its arsenal, and there could be more found in the coming days or weeks. The South Korean military says it's well equipped to deal with enemy jet incursions and attack UAVs, but it's much more difficult detecting these kind of ultra-small sized UAVs. Seoul says it plans to purchase low-altitude radar as soon as possible and other military gadgetry to prevent further infiltrations. Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff said it will take strong actions over Pyongyang's violation of its airspace and will also mobilize units across the country to search for other drones. The ministry says it will continue to evaluate possible routes and the damage the UAVs could cause while enhancing air defense operation systems to better counter small-sized UAV infiltration.
Okay, Hyun-bin, what do you know about this Sunday's discovery of a 3rd drone?
The ministry said on Sunday that a wild ginseng digger first spotted the UAV last October on a mountain in Samcheok, Gangwon province, and it reported to military officials last Friday. Initial investigations showed the drone is the same model as the one that crashed in Paju late last month. Preliminary analysis also shows the computer components inside the drone contain chips and microprocessors released back in the 1990s, but have long been obsolete. As you said, this is the 3rd discovery like this, and it is a worry, as the South Korean military failed to detect these ones until they crashed on South Korea's soil. There were almost certainly many more that made the flight, but made it back to North Korea safely. Back to you, Kanyang.
All right, that was our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Hyun-bin reporting about the ministry's future plans to counter small-sized drones after a 3rd suspected North Korean drone was found more than 100 kilometers south of the inter-Korean border. Thank you, Hyun-bin, for that. Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye says South Korea needs to come up with a contingency plan that addresses any type of provocation from North Korea. She was speaking at a meeting with her chief secretaries earlier this Monday morning. Now there, President Park said North Korea's string of ballistic missile launches and its strengthened surveillance techniques need to be taken seriously. She called on her officials to come up with a plan of action sooner rather than later. The sense of urgency, she said, was due to public fear over the continued threats and provocations. Meanwhile, South Korea, the U.S. and Japan will hold a meeting of their top nuclear negotiators in Washington on this Monday. Upon his arrival to the U.S. capital, Seoul's nuclear envoy also hinted about holding separate bilateral talks with his Japanese counterpart. Shin Se-min reports.
The newly appointed South Korean envoy to the six-party talks, Hwang Jun-guk, is in the U.S. capital for talks with his American and Japanese counterparts on drawing up countermeasures and preventive steps to deal with North Korea's latest provocations. According to South Korean officials, Hwang is scheduled to meet with Washington Special Envoy Glenn Davies and Japanese Foreign Ministry Director General Junichi Hara on Monday. Speaking to reporters upon his arrival in Washington, Hwang said the talks are designed to reaffirm coordination among the three nations in regards to further provocative acts by North Korea. The South Korean officials also hinted that there might be a chance for a bilateral meeting with Tokyo's chief nuclear envoy, something that didn't happen the last time the three countries met in this format last November. If the meeting is held, it'll reflect South Korea's push for strengthening security partnership with Japan, despite a number of unsolved territorial and historical disputes. Hwang said it would be, quote, unnatural for the nuclear envoys of neighboring countries not to meet. Any talks that might occur would center on the North Korean nuclear threat, and Hwang said Seoul could not rule out the possibility that Pyongyang will make good on its threat to conduct a fourth nuclear test. At the United Nations headquarters Friday, North Korea's deputy ambassador to the UN, Lee Tong-il, repeated that threat. He said Pyongyang would carry out a new form of nuclear test to protect itself from the U.S., which he says is, quote, hell-bent on regime change. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
The United States has reiterated its support for Tokyo's efforts to bolster its military defense capabilities. Washington also announced plans to send 2 more ballistic missile destroyers to Japan by the year 2017 to help its Asian ally counter North Korean threats and stand up to a more assertive China. Our UDN has the details.
U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel has welcomed Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's push for collective self-defense by altering Tokyo's war-renouncing constitution. Speaking at a joint news conference with his Japanese counterpart in Tokyo on Sunday, Hagel said Japan was playing a proactive role in contributing to global and regional peace and stability. In addition, Hagel announced plans to send 2 advanced destroyers equipped with ballistic missile defense systems to Japan in the face of a more threatening North Korea.
In response to Pyongyang's pattern of provocative and destabilizing actions, including recent missile launches in violation of UN Security Council resolutions.
The announcement comes a matter of days after Pyongyang test-fired 2 mid-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea, following a series of shorter-range missiles in recent weeks.
For the safety of Japan and of Eastern Asia, we believe that Japan's Aegis system and the United States Aegis system is very effective.
The extra ships will bring the total number of U.S. Aegis destroyers deployed in Japan to 7. Hagel also sent a message to China saying it should respect its neighbors, adding that coercion and intimidation will only lead to conflict. Hagel will be traveling to China starting Monday to talk to Beijing about its use of military power and encourage transparency. China has been bolstering its military while becoming more assertive in the territorial dispute with Japan in recent months. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
And when he touches down in the Chinese capital later today, U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel will land smack bang into the middle of a diplomatic row between Beijing and Tokyo. Now, our Hwang Sang-hee reports on how Washington is firmly taking Japan's stance on territorial issues.
The United States is siding with Japan in a dispute with China that's brewing over historical and territorial issues. And the biannual Western Pacific Naval Symposium next month is shaping up as center stage. China has invited all participating nations to take part in an international fleet review where they can parade their ships, with one exception, Japan. Washington has said no American ships will sail if no Japanese ships do. This is not the first time the U.S. has been drawn into the escalating diplomatic row between Japan and China. Late last year, China sparked a trans-Pacific uproar by declaring an air defense identification zone, giving itself the right to identify and take military action against aircraft near the Japan-controlled Senkaku Island, which is also claimed by China. Washington defied Beijing by sending military planes into the zone unannounced. Whether U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel will address the fleet review issue during his visit in Beijing remains unclear, but experts say China may not want Japanese warships in its waters because of Japan's occupation of China during the Second World War. Amid the regional spat, South Korea, a country also mired in a diplomatic dispute with Japan, is tightening its bond with China. According to sources Monday, Seoul's Financial Supervisory Service Governor Choi Soo-hyun met his Chinese counterpart in Beijing last week and agreed to bolster financial cooperation. In the past, South Korea had maintained closer economic ties with Japan. The two neighbors will also conduct a joint study of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women through historical documents preserved in China. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott's week-long tour of Northeast Asia has kicked off, and so too has his ambitious drive to ink free trade deals with the region's biggest economies. The trip begins in Tokyo, where Abbott is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on this Monday. Now, the two will be looking to come to terms on a bilateral free trade agreement that's been held up over imports of Australian beef. Abbott then arrives in Seoul for 2 days starting Tuesday. He and President Park will sign their free trade pact that was reached in December. The Australian leader finishes up his tour of the region in China, meeting with President Xi Jinping. Abbott is making the trip along with Australia's largest ever trade mission, underscoring Canberra's commitment to sign FTAs with Seoul, Beijing and Tokyo this year.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Moon Gon-yong live from Seoul.
Mobile shopping market for the dual use of the Korean name East Sea and Japanese name Sea of Japan in school textbooks in the state of Virginia. Protecting the public's personal information was at the top of the agenda this Monday morning on the third day of the National Assembly's questioning session of government officials. Both ruling and main opposition party lawmakers asked whether proper measures had been taken in light of 3 massive leaks of private data this year alone, including the nation's largest ever in January. Well, Finance Minister Hyun Oh-seok said the government was already taking appropriate measures and putting more pressure on companies to protect data. Lawmakers from the opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy also discussed President Park's deregulation drive. Now, they said removing too many regulations undermine the economy, with the strong taking it as an opportunity to prey on the weak. And staying in the nation, non-financial assets of Korean households make up more than 70% of all assets, and most of them are tied up in real estate. Well, Statistics Korea data shows that real estate assets in particular accounted for around 68% of households' non-financial assets last year. That is down almost 2 percentage points from a year earlier. Experts say, unlike in the past when property prices continued rising, real estate may no longer be a profitable investment outlet. They caution that an asset structure that leans too heavily on property could have a devastating impact on household finances should prices go down. They suggest people sell some of their real estate to enhance financial liquidity for a stable source of income for the years after retirement. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate has been edging down in recent months, but Korea's younger generation continues to find it extremely tough getting on the career ladder. Well, in a bid to create more jobs, the government and local organizations are showing the CEOs of the future how to get their own businesses off the ground. Here's our Kwon So-ah with this very special report.
Starting one's own business is the dream of many young creative minds in the nation. And to help them achieve that goal, the Ministry of Education recently distributed a startup-friendly school system manual, which allows students to leave university for up to 2 years so they can prepare to set up a business and gives credits to those participating in startup-related activities. 15 universities already had such a system in place at the end of 2013, and the ministry hopes to raise that number to 95 by the second semester of this year.
It is difficult for students to start their own business in terms of time, money, and room. However, our school has special startup courses that connect us with venture companies, so we can do internships.
Black Box, a club on the Seogang University campus, has already trained over 160 students who are currently active with their own businesses.
Despite strong passions and various opportunities to receive help, young Koreans remain hesitant to jump into business. Why?
Social perception is a problem. People think it's a better path for university students to work for conglomerates.
However, people engaged in consulting at around 230 startup organizations for young people see a bright future.
Due to the many success stories nowadays, the social perception seems to be changing.
Readiness, a company founded last year, is one of those success stories. Its travel application now boasts around 10,000 users. However, the company needed a good push off the starting line.
The biggest concern for young entrepreneurs is seed money. We received that by winning a contest held by the Korea Tourism Organization. These days, the Korea Institute of Startup and Entrepreneurship Development provides us with manpower.
Apart from the cases of individual success, the government hopes that these businesses grow bigger, create more jobs, and kickstart a virtuous cycle. Kwon So-ah, ARIRANG News.
And this just coming in, a new sign of hope in the search for missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. An Australian Navy ship says it has detected new signals consistent with those emitted from aircraft black boxes. A former Australian defense chief who is leading the search coordination body said Monday that the signals were detected by the Australian vessel known as Ocean Shield. However, he emphasized that further confirmation was needed. Time is running out on the search now in its 30th day. The batteries of the black box are feared to run out any day now if they haven't already. Meanwhile, the world's largest elections have kicked off today, and it is in India. Some 815 million Indians are eligible to cast their votes. Now, that's 100 million more than at the last elections in 2009. The polls to elect members of the country's lower house of parliament, the Lok Sabha, will take place in 9 phases over the next 5 weeks. The first phase is already underway in the northeastern states of Assam and Tripura. The elections could be a game changer of sorts. Now, polls released Sunday night showed the ruling Congress party led by the Nehru-Gandhi dynasty is likely to be served a blow following India's longest economic slowdown since the 1980s. Meanwhile, the outlook is rosier for the Bharatiya Janata Party led by Hindu nationalist leader Narendra Modi. It and its allies are forecast to grab the biggest chunk of the 543-seat legislature, though they're still likely fall short of a majority. Now, the results of the vote are expected to come out on May 16th. And on a much different note, Korean rhythmic gymnast Jae had a weekend to write home about at the Lisbon World Cup in Portugal. The 19-year-old finished first in the ball, clubs, and ribbon events on Sunday, one day after becoming the first Korean ever to win the individual all-around. Now, she leaves Portugal with 4 gold medals in total and 1 bronze from hoop. Sun, who finished 5th at the London Olympic Games 2 years ago, is shooting to win multiple titles at the Asian Games in Incheon right here in Korea this fall. Now it's time for our daily arts and culture segment. Let's see what this week has in store for us. And of course, we are joined live in the studio by our Im Yoon-hee. Good afternoon to you, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So this past weekend, especially yesterday, we saw some beautiful weather.
We did.
Right. So I took a little trip around Seoul and I found a photo exhibition. I don't know if you're like animals. Do you like animals, Kanya?
I think I do from afar, but I'm a little bit afraid to get close to them.
So this photo exhibition is perfect for you. It shows wild animals in their home natural habitat, and so this exhibition was put together to send a message as well. So not only is it fun to look at, but it's very meaningful. So let's take a look.
It's easy to forget about them. Sometimes wild animals feel worlds away. And although it's not the real thing, these crystal clear pictures take us to the homes of animals around the world. But ecosystems everywhere are being threatened, along with the animals who live there. There's a growing need for conservation efforts, and that starts with awareness, which can begin right here in this gallery.
When you come to this exhibition, you'll see animals from sky, land, and water. People can connect with these animals through these pictures. But it's unfortunate because these precious animals are disappearing. So we need to love and protect them and learn about our planet Earth.
When it comes to pictures, it's all about timing. These 5 Dalmatian pelicans pose for the perfect shot. The photographer had to get a little creative, using a motorized camera to catch these open-mouthed grins. And when life gets hard, sometimes you just gotta hang on for dear life. Like this little red-eyed tree frog. With each drop of rain, his normally strong, sticky grip begins to lose hold. And in the wild, it's a fight for food and a fight for your life. Where there's a winner, there's also a loser. And in this case, a mother's unborn young is now a nutritious meal for this Arctic fox. But such is a circle of life.
This photographer really wanted to capture this shot, so he visited their habitats daily for 6 months. And one day, out of the blue, a fox came up and circled him, letting him finally take the picture. These pictures here were taken in the wild. Some take only 1 month and some take years to capture. Not only that, but they're taken in extreme environments like the scorching desert or freezing Antarctic, all while fighting off things like bugs and disease.
To take visitors one step closer to the real thing, the exhibition also contains a virtual animal interaction simulator. Step into the forest and pet a tiger, or even teach a dolphin to wave. There's something that we grew up loving, but their existence is being threatened. From the open skies to the deep blue oceans, animals range in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And now it's up to us to keep it that way.
Well, Yunia, it definitely looks like you had some fun yourself. These photographs are incredible. I cannot believe some photographers would spend just years, just trying to get one shot. And, are there any animals that these conservationists would like to protect in Korea?
Right, so here in Korea there are a few, such as a black Asiatic bear, also known as the moon bear. There's a Eurasian otter and the long-tailed coral. So there are quite a few others, but people are really taking a step forward to conserve these animals here in Korea.
Definitely a very important move and a meaningful one as well. All right, thank you, Uni, for that report today, and we will speak to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
afternoon. It was chilly this weekend, but the week has gotten off to a warmer start. Now reaching up to 23 degrees in some regions, and it looks like the temperatures will go up even more throughout the week. But we have to keep in mind that temperature gaps between the mornings and nights will remain wide. Now for more details, let's shift over to our satellite map. We have fairly clear skies over the nation, except for the southern parts. Now, although the fine dust level is a little higher than the normal and the air quality is pretty dry, so putting the advisory in for some regions. Now, going over to our temperature readings. Seoul tops out at 17 degrees this afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Gwangju and Busan will peak up both at 19 degrees. Now, moving over to other regions, Jeju Island makes it up to 16, Dokdo peaks at 18, while Mangkumgang tops out at 13. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you, Kanyang.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for that. And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with Business Today at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.